Good evening, everyone. We will just start 2 more minutes until everybody is able to log in, and then we will start. Good evening, everyone. So just 1 more minute, and then we will start. Thank you for joining us. And I think we have a good time to start right now. So we can start with the next slide. I'm happy to be here. The next, thank you. So good evening, everyone. My name is Carolina Carvalho. I'm a cardiologist, a scientist, and an educator at the University of Toronto. And I work in cardiovascular prevention and rehabilitation at the Toronto Rehabilitation Institute. So I'm delighted to be here tonight moderating this conversation. But before we begin, I just would like to share a few announcements. So this meeting will be recorded, and a link to the recording will be provided for future reference. We will have time for questions at the end, so please use the Q&A button to submit your questions. And at this time, I want to also jump to the next slide and talk a little bit about one of the main reasons we're here today to talk about the Wear Red Canada campaign. So Wear Red Canada is celebrated annually across Canada on February 13 to raise awareness about women's heart health. Events are held across the country to serve as a reminder for all people in Canada, but especially women, to be mindful, curious, and proactive in the management of our heart health and wellness. And why it's important. So next slide. So it's very important to talk about women's cardiovascular health because still this is the #1 reason for death among women in Canada. Okay. As you can see on the left side of the screen, there are some facts about women's health. So men and women may have different symptoms during a heart attack. We certainly have different risk factors, and certainly we have different complications and a lot of other things. So if you wanted to learn more about that, I would really suggest you to get involved and to access the Wear Red Canada website. There are a lot of resources available there, but also you can consider joining the Canadian Women's Heart Health Alliance, where you'll be there with other healthcare providers and other people with lived experience. And you can not only learn more about women's cardiovascular health, but also advocate for that. So now, with no further delay, I will ask Dr. Reitav to join us. Dr. Jan Reitav is a clinical health and rehabilitation psychologist, He's certified in behavior sleep medicine, complex trauma, EMDR therapy with EMDRIA. He's a psychologist at the Toronto Rehab program. And Dr. Reitav, this is all yours. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Carolina. And I'm thrilled and excited to be here tonight and sharing a message. And our message is about healing the heart and strengthening the mind. And one of the things that we want to underline for everyone is that these two aspects of recovery, the physical heart mending, and the impact of the physical heart breaking and causing problems for the body and the mind also tend to result in a number of mental symptoms, which collectively we call PTSD. And we want to get across to everyone that these are a part of the experience of having gone through a life-threatening heart event, and that the roots for both the broken heart as well as the all of the mental symptoms that come with it are deep in the brainstem. And we're going to talk about this tonight in a way that really highlights lived experience. And so I'm really thrilled that Geneviève is here to tell her story. And the conversation we're going to have back and forth is really about a number of themes. And so the more important theme here is survival, that everyone that has gone through a heart event of whatever severity, it remains an issue for months after the event. It's not just getting through the days and weeks of the event. It really is about a journey to recovery. And Geneviève is going to tell her story, and I'm so thrilled that she's sharing it. She's such a wonderful communicator, and she's so determined, and she's such an inspiration. So we're all in for a treat. The second part of the conversation, a conversation about science, this is about the change, the radical change in health, especially mental health, that has come about because of our understanding of neuroimaging, which is how we get pictures of what the brain is doing when we are experiencing things like trauma. And that has allowed us to really change how we're going about treating problems. And I'm going to be talking about one specific kind of treatment that really embeds in the way in which it works with the person, an understanding of the brain. You know, what is the brain doing? Why is it responding in the way it is? And how can we get to the roots of the problem and relieve the problems and the symptoms that the person is experiencing? And I'm so thrilled that we have Dr. Ruth Lanius here today. She is one of the world preeminent researchers in neuroimaging of PTSD. So she will be able to comment on things that Geneviève and I speak about and maybe putting it into context. And the most important thing, as we kind of tie those two themes together, the theme of survival and the theme of integrating science into our work, is about hope. That I see a real chance for things to be very different for every woman that's had a heart event, especially dissections. I think if the work with Geneviève is any indication that these are things that will be more treatable and result in much better outcomes for all. So that's the story that we're going to get to. I'm going to start with an article just to set a stage for this. Why is it important? Why is this story that we're going to hear from Geneviève so important? This is an article that was released just under 2 years ago. Very important. It's a report from a coronary artery dissection registry. So this is where they have tracked the outcomes for women who have had coronary artery dissections across years. And by compiling this data, they demonstrated that about 35%, that's 1 in 3 of the women who've had a dissection event, also have diagnosed PTSD, meaning that the symptoms that they experience are to a level that it interferes with their ability to return back to their normal day-to-day life. And in addition to that, oops, sorry. There we go. In addition to that, I wanted to say that what the article concluded is that all of this taken together emphasized the importance for screening for PTSD after the spontaneous coronary artery dissections, and then connecting people who meet criteria for PTSD to empirically supported treatments. And I think that's what we're going to come back to before we finish up for today. It is now my great pleasure to introduce Geneviève, who has a Bachelor of Journalism. She is an accomplished writer who has worked in television, written extensively. More importantly, she is a graduate of our cardiac rehab program and has really enjoyed the efforts of what she's learned in our program. So without further ado, Geneviève.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Reitav, Dr. Carvalho, and welcome to Dr. Ruth Lanius. My name is Geneviève de Souza, and this is going to be the first time I'm going to say this. I am an abdominal aortic dissection survivor. I was supposed to be dead, but here I am. I survived. And I'm so grateful for this opportunity by UHN's Dr. Reitav, Dr. Carolina Carvalho, and the rest of the team at UHN, who I realized just yesterday while scrolling through Instagram that it is the #2 hospital in the world. And I'm so thrilled to be so connected to this hospital. Hopefully by the end of this, you will be inspired. You'll have hope for a better or a new life, and be motivated to take charge of your health as I did. In the summer of 2024, I Googled how to be happy and healthy. I had been vigorously exercising since 2012. It was the year my marriage ended, my business failed, I was dragged through the courts in a Hollywood-style divorce. I was bankrupted. I took ownership of my own house. I was packed with debts and bills, and I needed to rebuild fast. Oh, and I had a 6-year-old in tow. I went into survival mode. I knew a few things. I had to provide for my child. I had to make money. I needed a support network of amazing friends, and I had to take care of me. And you'll notice I was last on that list. I knew what I wanted: to be a great parent, to have a thriving business, and to have a healthy and lean body. So I did it all. I did everything without any help because I was a good multitasker, and I thought I could. But I also knew what I didn't want. I didn't want to fail as a parent. I didn't want expensive gym memberships, and I didn't want to be hijacked by people promising me the world and things that didn't serve me well. And I didn't want to be held hostage. I wanted freedom to live my life my way. So what was my way? I was a devoted mom. I attended everything my child was involved in. I was an entrepreneur building a business. I worked 24/7 to earn money. I paid every bill on my own. I earned money doing what I loved. loved what I did. I cared about my community. I was an advocate for causes that affected everyone's bottom line. I put the well-being of friends and family over mine. I overgave, over-delivered, and overachieved. I searched for love, but instead found hate, abuse, and destruction. That was others' preferred way of life. So I became angry, yet I put out a brave face and fooled everyone that I was okay. So who was I? I was active, an advocate, driven, perfectionist. I had a lot of conviction. I was a planner, a doer, and I demanded decency from everyone because that's what I put out. I looked good, but I felt awful. For 12 years, the trauma from my past haunted me, and I continued to face more. The death of my parents, the death of two best friends, financial ruin, ups and downs of a business, failing health, the loss of friends, and so much more. And my body started to react. The warning signs were there. There was no sleep. I had body aches all the time. I woke up tired, leg pain, breathlessness, chest pain, dizziness, feeling off, heart palpitations, shaky. I had it all. So by October 2024, I felt the most abnormal I had ever felt in my entire life. Pain, dizziness, shaky, chest pain, tummy pain, weakness, vision changes, cravings for sugar and salt, and terrible, terrible stomach and back pains. I used to sit up at night worrying, but I kept functioning because I could. I kept doing everything because I wanted to, and it was all at high capacity. I didn't take a break because that was a waste of time. It was a waste of valuable time. I did it all until I couldn't. I saw 3 doctors, including my GP, and all suggested to me that I had a stomach virus, and I had to reduce my stress. And so my symptoms worsened.
So let me change the focus a little bit. So what Geneviève has told us about is her experience. And I want to kind of think about what she's told us as far as what the brain is making of her experience. And so when she talks about all of these stressors, all of these things that have happened, and her really determined push to get through everything on her own, it is affecting the balance, the way in which the brain regulates the nervous system. And so I'm just going to introduce some important ideas that hopefully will help in understanding where the risks are coming in and then how that's creating health problems or the potential for a health problem for Geneviève. So if we look at the brain, there are 3 levels of brain activity. And in a way, all 3 levels are happening all the time for all of us. So at the top level, we have what I would call your thinking brain. So that's the part of you that listens to words, makes sense of them. If you don't understand, you would ask a question, and you kind of create an understanding of things. And the thinking brain is what we value the most. And we really, most of us think that we're in charge because we get up in the morning and we determine what we're going to do. But underneath it are 2 very important levels that support the thinking brain. And when they go wrong, they in turn are going to undermine what the thinking brain can do. So what are those 2 lower levels? So as we get to the middle area of the brain, we have the emotional brain. And the emotional brain is the one that really that can feel very positive feelings, like I feel loved, or it can feel very intense feelings of I feel afraid, or I feel angry, or I feel sad and alone. And so it is a very important part of what we're experiencing moment to moment. But beyond these two, and even below these two, we have a third level, which I call the survival brain. And the survival brain is where our autonomic nervous system lives. And it was named the autonomic because it used to be thought that we cannot change it, we cannot influence it. It does its own automatic thing. So it tells the heart when to beat, it tells the lungs when to breathe, it tells the digestive system to digest food and so forth. But it's the survival system that is always on guard for trouble and difficulty and any kind of threat that might come up. So, if we think about what Geneviève has told us and how the brain really works at its very best, it works at its best when we feel secure, when we feel calm. And there's an area in the brain called the paraventricular nucleus, and it releases oxytocin. Oxytocin is sometimes called the love hormone or the snuggle hormone. It's the feeling we get when somebody that we care about loves us, gives us a hug, tells us we're the best, right? We feel at a deep level that we're cared about and we're important. And that oxytocin release calms an area of the brain called the locus coeruleus. And I'm going to call that the alarm center of the brain, because the brain and the survival brain is always looking for trouble. And one of the ways in which that locus coeruleus, that alarm center, works for us is when it's calm because we feel loved and appreciated and secured, it slows down our heart rate, right? And it also slows down an area of the brain that actively hijacks the heart and gets the heart to beat quickly. That's the sympathetic system. And so these things are all in balance when you feel like things are calm and you feel secure. Now, what happens if the alarm system is not feeling secure? Because of the things that Geneviève told us, there were many, many challenges. And I think in many respects, all of us have challenges all the time. So that's not unique to any of us. But what happens in the brain when there is these persistent, ongoing alarms happening? Well, for one thing, the locus coeruleus releases norepinephrine, and that fires up the whole brain. And I'm going to highlight three different areas that are very important. So one important area is the medial prefrontal cortex, or the thinking brain. And when it fires it up with noradrenaline, the thinking brain doesn't get smarter and plan better. It looks for danger. Where is the lion? I know I'm in trouble. I know there's danger around me. Where is that lion? And it kind of fixates on that problem. The other area that alarm center activates is the part of the brain that shoots up all of your emotional reactions, your sense of fear, your sense of frustration, your anger, your sadness, your loneliness, your guilt, your grief, your sad, and all of those things become much more intense. And the third element, it hijacks the heart. It tells the person, we are under alarm. There is a significant danger around us. So the heart doesn't get a break. It has this pressure that's leaning on it. Now, Geneviève also mentioned that there were body pains, right? She had terrible stomach pains, back pains. There are all these pathways from the body up into the brain. And what those pathways do is they light up the areas that trigger or that signal arousal. And so all of that, again, gets us into a place where we feel very vulnerable. Danger is around us, and we have to pay attention to it. So with that as kind of a explanation of what Geneviève was experiencing at a deeper level, these stressors that were building up and building up. Let's go back to hear her story.
So on Thanksgiving Saturday in October 2024, during a phone call, I felt a ripping sensation down the middle of my chest. I immediately called out to my son and I said, "Call 911. I think I'm having a heart attack." I was taken to Sunnybrook Hospital. They did blood work. They took my blood pressure. They saw it was a bit elevated and they did an ECG. They said everything was normal. So they sent me home. That night, I continued to feel pain. I stayed up afraid to sleep. I kept all the lights on because I was afraid of darkness. I paced my living room for comfort. I prayed. And again, at 3 a.m, my son called 911 a second time. And I was taken by ambulance, this time to North York General. The first time was to Sunnybrook Hospital. This time at North York General ER, I felt alone. I told my son to stay home because he was doing an exam on Monday. They did blood work. They took my blood pressure. They saw it was elevated and they did an ECG. It was almost a carbon copy treatment of 24 hours ago. They said everything was normal. And the ER doctor said to me, "Here's a prescription for pantoprazole. Hope it's not your aorta." And she sent me home. The next 2 days were spent at my GP's office trying to figure out why I still felt so bad. My BP was high. The stomach was so bad. But the doctor looked at me and she suggested maybe it was a stomach virus. I also suspect that I appeared high maintenance. And I really didn't know what else to do but to just sit there in front of her and try to wait for answers. But she didn't have any. She thought it was a stomach virus. My BP was elevated, but she said to just rest and stop stressing out so much. So what did I do? I did a full grocery shop. And with 4 bags in each hand, I still had chest pain, back pain, tummy pain, high BP, and lots of fear. With no concrete answers in hand from Toronto hospitals and my symptoms getting worse, the next morning I said goodbye to my son who was writing an exam and told him, "There's food in the fridge, I've done the groceries, there's lots to eat, but I'm going to drive myself to Mackenzie Hospital in Richmond Hill to see what's going on." When I got to Mackenzie, I was almost the first one in. They did blood work, measured my BP, did an ECG, and said everything was normal. But the young ER doctor there questioned why 2 hospitals had sent me home just days ago, and I still had persistent symptoms. After the routine test came back, he said he wanted to do one more test. Till today, I don't know what that test is. That test prompted him to send me for an emergency CT scan. There I was sitting in the waiting room. I was the only one left not to be able to go home. I asked if I could get my laptop from my car because writing was a way of me to go back to my normal life and to manage my stress. The doctor said, "No, you cannot walk." I was mobilized, put in a wheelchair. 5 nurses descended on me and wheeled very quickly in for a CT scan. Soon after he got the results, the doctor came to me and said, "Miss D'Souza, I have to admit you have an abdominal aortic dissection. This is a tear in your lower aorta." I really didn't know what that was. I really didn't understand the nature of it. I didn't think I was in danger, and I wasn't really scared, but I called my family. Before you know it, 3 heart specialists, including the cardiovascular surgeon, came to my ER bed, and they kept looking at me, almost like they wanted to see signs of something else, something a little more severe. I was admitted to ICU immediately at Mackenzie Hospital. It was something that I believe till today should have happened at North York General and at Sunnybrook. In the middle of being admitted, somebody lost my favorite shoes, and I fixated on it. And till today, I still look back on that moment and remember that if someone hadn't lost my shoes, I wouldn't have had a good sense of humor in the hospital.
Okay, and let's shift now to what is the body experiencing and how is the body talking to the brain? So I'm going to share my slides. So Reitav mentioned the doctor said it was an aortic dissection. So what that means is that in the aorta that's pictured here, let me see if I can get my pointer to work. There we go. Pointer, laser pointer. Okay. So this is the aorta. The heart is just below here, and the aorta is this structure here. And here's a close-up of the aorta. And what you see is the wall of the aorta is a series of layers, and those 2 layers begin to separate, to tear apart. And as they tear apart, blood begins to flow into that dead end. And as it flows into the dead end, it can make that worse. And you can see down here that this dead end can actually become quite large and can become life-threatening. So clearly, the body and the signals from the heart and from the aorta are experiencing a problem. Now, the other kind of dissection that other women have experienced is called a sudden coronary artery dissection, or a SCAD. SCADs, like an aortic dissection, are basically the same kind of experience. So here is your artery itself, and then you see there's a beginning of a tear in the wall of that artery. And then as blood flows, it begins to get more of that layer of skin or layer of the internal artery to lift up, and then it can cause a complete occlusion or break in that artery. So it's the same kind of a problem, except it's located in the artery around the heart, as opposed to on the aorta, which leaves the heart. But the problem for both is the same, that it becomes a life-threatening problem. Now, how does the brain know that there's any kind of a problem? So we have the brain up here, we have the spinal cord here, and then we have a nerve that leaves it's the 10th cranial nerve, or the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is really more of a cable than a nerve. It goes out to the whole body, or sorry, to the whole of the visceral internal organs. So from the heart, from the lungs, from all your digestive organs, the kidney, the bladder, the sexual organs, all of those send signals. 80% of this nerve is sending signals up to the brain. And basically, at this point, the signal that it's sending is danger, we're dying. So where does that signal go to? So the signal comes into the root of the brainstem. So here you have your brainstem, that's the survival brain, and then the thinking brain and the emotional brain. And right at the very root of that survival brain, you have what I call the early response hub. It's called the nucleus tractus solidaris in Latin. but it's an early response hub. It immediately registers a problem. And what does it do? It passes on the problem to two nearby nuclei. So the RVLM is going to quickly increase your heart rate. You're recognizing danger. You're going to feel that. And you also pass the signal up to the paraventricular nucleus, which then realizes, Houston, we have a problem. So this early response hub is integrating information from the body right away, and it's beginning to manage the situation almost the way a medical doctor would manage a problem as he sees it, quickly realizing that something bad is happening and we need to make some compensations. So the heart rate might go up, respiration might get shallow, blood pressure might climb. So all of these things are automatic. They're happening. Even you may not even be realizing that what's going on. So that's happening at the lowest level of the brainstem. In addition to that, the early response hub sends a message up to what I would call your body alarm hub. It too has a Latin name, the parabrachial nucleus, and this orchestrates all of the arousal and emotional responses to the emerging danger that the body is experiencing. So the periaqueductal gray is the area that increases emotional responses or defensive responses. It will activate fight or flight initially, and if that isn't working, then it will shift to kind of a collapse and immobility. It activates your alarm system. So earlier I talked about the locus coeruleus, which fires up the whole brain in response to the danger. And it also lets the amygdala know that we have a major issue here and it is a life-threatening situation. So to summarize what the body alarm hub is doing is that it takes the signals from the body, and all of this is coming in from that early emotional warning system, and it's translating it into motivational urgency. This is I must do something to fix this. And it also, more importantly, imprints what the body is holding into memory. So it no longer becomes just an experience that comes and goes. It becomes a life-threatening moment, much the same as a person who's gone through a car accident might remember the squealing tires and then the smash of their car hitting another car, that memory of the sound of the squealing tires is locked into memory. In exactly the same way, during a dissection event, the brain is saying, I don't ever want to experience this ever again. I better remember exactly what is happening. And it locks that experience of the dissection as it's happening into memory. So that hub is then sending the signal out to the wider brain, the whole brain, so that it can organize responses that hopefully will keep you alive. And all of these things together then become part of what we are treating. So we're not just treating what the problem is, the dissection in the aorta. We're also treating this cascade effect into the brain of a traumatic event. And both of those become urgent focus of attention. So with that, back to Geneviève.
Well, the only thing that was sticking in my memory while my brain was doing its thing, while my heart also was doing its thing, I was fixated on my lost shoes. So what did I do? I started to feel like I was, or make myself feel like I was normal. So I ended up taking selfies. You'll see this one with my ICU nurse. For anybody who knows me, they know that one of my greatest activities while I'm out with them is to take pictures, and I take pictures all the time. And so being in ICU wasn't any different. I wanted some sort of a normal life, so I started taking selfies. I was still in excruciating pain. I was hooked up to so many wires that till today, here's a picture of me hooked up to these wires. Till today, I still can't believe how many wires were hooked up to my body. I had round-the-clock nurses. I had blood work taken practically every hour. I had BP checks taken, it seemed like every 30 minutes. I was on meds. I was so drugged. I wasn't allowed any movement. I couldn't get out of my bed. They were all coming in and out constantly, looking to see if there were any signs that they were losing me. I had very severe constipation from the food because it was very salty, which to me, I was confused because for someone with high blood pressure, you're not supposed to have a lot of salt. So that one was kind of a mystery for me. But I had to keep things normal. So what did I do? I taught an English class online in ICU. And while I was teaching it, my students were looking behind me and asking me, "Where are you, miss?" And I said, I'm in a hospital. I'm in ICU. I said, "Okay, let's go. Let's continue with our class." We continued with our class, and in walks the cardiovascular surgeon, Dr. Ali Faturi. I'll never forget the look on his face. And he looked at me and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm teaching a class." Just like that. I'm teaching a class. And he said, "Is there any stress involved?" And I said, "No, but take a look at my students." And he waved and he said, "Are you enjoying this?" I said, "Yes." I said, "I have to. I love it. I'm going to continue." He said, "Okay, no stress." And he walked out. It was at that point that I knew, okay, I still had it in me to live. I still had it in me to keep going. And I still had it in me some sort of normalcy. Until the hospital administrator walked in. And she came in with a clipboard. And she looked at me like this to see if there were any signs that they were going to lose me. And then she said to me, "Do you have a will in place?" I said, "Yes, I do. I have a draft, but the final isn't signed." And she says, "Well, you better let your lawyer know." So I let my lawyer know. I phoned him up and I said, "Paul, I don't think the last version of my will is signed. I need to sign it." He says, "Where are you?" I told him where I was. He came right over and I took a selfie in the hospital with my lawyer, signing the last draft of my will. He gave a copy to the administrator, kept a copy for my son, a copy for himself. He says, "Well, you don't need a copy. You might not be around." And we had a good laugh. And then he looked at me and he said, "I think you're going to live." And I said, "How do you know that?" And he said, "Because I know your iron will, and I know you." I responded really well to meds. I had them all running around for more meds and more meds. I took all my meds. I took them when I was supposed to. I joked with the staff. The doctors were shocked because I was supposed to die. But instead, I got better and I got moved to a general ward. And on the 8th day, I got to have a shower. I started rehab in the hospital. Friends, family, and my students came to visit me. The day I was discharged, and when my brother took me home, was the day I began a proactive journey towards advocating for my health. I was discharged on October the 25th without my favorite shoes, and I mourned their loss. My sister luckily bought me a cheap pair of slippers at the H Mart down the street from Mackenzie Hospital, and when my brother took me home, reality set in. Soon I was touched by a network of angels. One friend cooked for me and my son for 7 months because food was one of the most vital things that I needed, and so did my son. 2 other friends made life happy and safe for my son while I recovered. I was blessed. I had to figure everything else out, and of course I did. That was reality. 8 months of recovery at home began alone. My son was at school. Mackenzie Hospital connected me to Mac Clinic, who connected me with additional medical help. My BP fluctuated. Some days it spiked. I was still in pain. I was so scared to take a shower. I visited ER 3 times. Not knowing what was happening to my body, I was scared. I had changes in my meds. I was always so symptomatic, and I was too scared to go out, not even for a coffee, nothing. The symptoms of dizziness, lightheadedness, nausea, heart palpitations, no sleep. I felt numb. I stared out the window 24/7. My mental focus was challenged. I had fear of death, fear of being alone, fear of going out, fear of not being prepared, fear of being myself again. So I saw 2 doctors a week to keep things in check. Thanks to Dr. Leslie Markle, my hypertension doctor, she introduced me to cardiac college. Cardiac rehab was told to me as a comprehensive program run by UHN. Yes, the #2 hospital in the world. A few months later, I met with Dr. Carvalho. I was booked to do a fitness test, and the night before, I had no sleep. I woke up with heart palpitations. I was shaking. I barely had a voice, yet I still made it in. I still sat down with her. I looked at Dr. Carvalho, and I cried my eyes out. And she said, "What's wrong?" I said, "I'm too scared to do this. That tear in my aorta is going to get bigger if I do this fitness test. I'm not ready. Even though my ECG is normal, you're saying it is, they're saying it is, I'm not normal." And she looked at me, and she actually heard me. She heard what I said. For the first time, I felt heard. I felt seen. I felt understood. And then she said the magic words. "It's okay. You don't have to do it today. You'll do it when you're ready." And she gave me the biggest hug ever. And this, to me, till today, told me something about the culture at UHN, at cardiac rehab, and the team that puts together their programs and everything that they are committed to. All of that started with Dr. Carvalho's hug. A few months later, after that day, I sought emotional and psychological help. I felt like I was okay. Physically, I was getting to where I wanted to be. The doctors were guiding me, so my physical health was taken care of. But I was on them every day. I made sure that I saw 1 or 2 doctors a week. It was a commitment. Luckily, I'm self-employed, so I was able to give myself the day off when I needed to. I tried yoga, Pilates, mindfulness, symphony music, comedy, spirituality. Nothing was sustainable to work, to eat, to cure my mind. Several months later, I met with Dr. Jan Reitav. And the first thing he did was to show me how to do diaphragmatic breathing. Diaphragmatic breathing is when you breathe in and you breathe out really slowly and mindfully. Immediately, we got into sessions. I told him I was experiencing severe symptoms, and I told him that all I needed was to cure my brain because that was what was killing me.
I've shared some of these symptoms that you were describing at the time. You see this? So when I first saw Genevieve, she was scared about everything. And as I often do, I start with breathing because it's the one way that you can slow the nervous system down. You can create a sense of having a little bit of agency over the things that are happening to you. And on the slide are some of the symptoms that Genevieve described to me. And all of these are part and parcel of what we call post-traumatic stress disorder. And most often we think of PTSD as something that happens when some event around you scares you or terrifies you, like you're in a car accident. But I do think that your body has the same impact on the mind as a car that you might be hitting on the outside. In fact, probably more so. So all of these reactions, all of these symptoms, from the hypervigilance, the severe sleep problems, loss of trust in your own body, anger, betrayal, strong emotions about what has happened, all of these are part of what the mind is struggling with and what need to be addressed as we go into the treatment. And we'll come back to hear a little bit more about Genevieve's experience of the treatment. But I wanted to first highlight a very important psychiatrist who has developed a treatment program called Deep Brain Reorienting, or DBR. And this is a quote from the book that he wrote and was out last year. He said, "Traumatic experiences are fundamentally painful and often shocking and horrifying. Shock of this kind immediately bypasses your emotional systems and your behavioral ways of responding. It tells the body there is no time to wait for the emotions or for any kind of defensive behavioral response. The time is now. Wake up. It's important." And Dr. Frank Corrigan's perspective is that we as therapists, as clinicians, can help our clients identify the body shocks that the body has created and that it's holding on to allow the person to become able to let go of these traumatic events. So that's a very important perspective, that body shocks are at the very root of the traumatic experience. So in terms of the basic theory, I'm not going to go into great detail on the theory. People can look it up. But the core elements of it, the things that make it highly effective and I think unique in treatment. And trust me, I've been doing psychotherapy for 45 years, and this treatment is the only one that I found that truly helps trauma to be released. So what Frank discovered is, first of all, somebody who's had trauma has to be brought into the present because their brain is living in that traumatic moment. It can't escape it. it can't see that there is a world around them that is calm and that is not threatening. So there's a procedure where we first spend time to ground the person. He calls that the where self, the part of you that always knows where you are. And then you also work with the person to find a moment that has activated the nervous system. We call that the activating stimulus. And it's not very difficult to find for someone who's gone through life-threatening experiences. There are the moments that they go into emerge. There's their discussions with their doctors. That's the times when they're wheeled into surgical rooms or out of surgical rooms. There are many activating stimuli. And you just need to take one, but you need to start very slowly and to give the person a sense of control, that they can feel their body responding step by step. And what happens, very interestingly, is it's not that they remember something with their thinking brain. No. What happens is once you've activated that response, they actually feel it in their body as if it is happening right now. It's a reliving of the experience. So this is a experiential treatment. It's not a talk therapy. And I think that's very important. It's one of the few experiential therapies that aim to get the person back to the starting point. So Geneviève, if you want to maybe talk a little bit to your experiences of the DBR treatments.
So I was a little unsure about DBR. It was new, it was innovative. I was skeptical. I was searching for something, the what else. The breathing I was good with. It was helping me a lot, the diaphragmatic breathing, but I wasn't quite sold on deep brain reorienting. And as a journalist, I did my research. I did a ton of research, and I really felt that during my first few sessions with Dr. Reitav, I was able to understand it in a very simple way without complicated formulas and diagrams and statistics. He just explained to me every session what was actually happening, and I really understood. So by the I would say the fifth session, um, by the way, the sessions were deeply painful because for me, it was those moments of trauma that I had to face head on. After a few sessions, I became a believer. My heart palpitations subsided. I got better quality sleep. Oh, it was such a treat to sleep for 7 hours, sometimes even 8 hours, without an interruption. I was more focused. I went out with friends and family. I could breathe easier. I didn't have heart palpitations. Suddenly, I was thinking to myself, what's doing that? So I saw Dr. Reitav. We did our sessions once a week. We continue to do our sessions, and everything seems to have subsided. I felt the release of various traumas each time we did our session, slowly, gently, and very meticulously. DBR treatment for me almost appears like that life-saving treatment that I had been searching for all my life. My fear diminished. My sense of courage was restored. And I felt that this was something that was sustainable. It's something that I'm going to continue. And it's something that I believe could change so much in so many lives. And I'm so deeply grateful to Dr. Reitav for doing these treatments with me. I'm thankful for so many of my doctors. I have a whole list of them. I have a cardiovascular surgeon. I have 3 cardiologists. I have a hypertension specialist. I have a respirologist, an ENT specialist. Of course, my dentist who tells me to keep flossing because that's good for reducing your cholesterol. A family physician, a psychologist in Dr. Reitav, a kinesiologist who I owe so much to. And I have a life coach, and I have my son. I have better sleep, better BP management. My referral to UHN was the best thing that ever happened to me. I met kinesiologist Christine Okapinti, who, if she's here, Christine, you understood me. You cared. You created a plan that moved me along and pushed my physical exercise limits gently and effectively. And for 4 months, I committed to the entire staff at Cardiac College, at rehab, attended every online and offline seminar, every exercise class. I made lifelong friends. I graduated from Cardiac College on January 29th, and they even gave me a certificate. I still see doctors, 2 doctors every week. My BP still spikes every now and then. I don't freak out as much. I'm calmer. I meditate. I walk fearlessly. I exercise daily. I cook and eat with reduced salt. I pray. I do the work that I love and love the work that I do. And I continue to give back, which is the biggest reason that I'm doing this chat with you today. In 3 days, I will have a milestone birthday. And my gift to myself this year and to you is to give you hope and to inspire you. And the gift I gave myself was the gift of taking charge of my health and connecting with all the help, mind, body, and soul, with all the doctors, all the treatments that I've explored and researched. I decided I'm going to take care of me. And the best part, while on a quick trip to find an antique vase, after I got out of Mackenzie Hospital, I found my shoes. They were for sale at a Value Village close to Mackenzie Hospital. Yes, they were. I went in there looking for a vase, an antique vase. I look over at the shoes. There are my shoes. I bought them back, and I soon realized that you can lose something. You can let it go. You can work hard to recover from that loss, and the rewards that come are even better. My wish for you all is to do everything in your power to take back what's yours. That's your health. Be proactive, be mindful, be positive, be you. Get answers from all the tests. Get answers. Accountability is important. No one else will care about you as much as you care about you. Everything else falls into place. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I really, really hope that I've inspired you with my story. I know my voice is a little shaky, and this is so uncharacteristic for me. And it's probably because I am having a milestone birthday soon. And you know how it is. You get older, you start to weep more, you watch a commercial, you cry, right? Well, these are happy tears because today my name is Genevieve D'Souza, and I am an abdominal aortic dissection survivor, and I'm living to give you hope. Thank you.
Wow, lovely. Thank you, Genevieve. And we are going to open it up to questions in just a moment. Before we do, I'm going to go back to our slides, and I'm going to remind people of where we started. And you'll recall that the statistics that we have tell us that about 35% of those who've had artery dissections have all the PTSD symptoms that would diagnose you as having that kind of all of the things that Geneviève discussed, and that there are treatments. But let me also make a few other points about how this is so important. These are not just things that are inconvenient or in some way nuisance experiences. We know from studies that have been done that these PTSD symptoms themselves can persist for decades. So these do not, anything that the survival brain has locked in to experience, it does not easily let go of. And there are different risk factors, how intense the pain was. So from Geneviève's description, I mean, she was in agony both before it was diagnosed as well as the stay in the hospital. She did get medicines for the pain and so forth. But all of these things can impact whether you do end up with PTSD or you don't. Among the things that are, I think, very important to understand is the additional risks that untreated PTSD have. So post-MI, those with elevated PTSD scores are more likely to be admitted to hospital for recurrent cardiac symptoms, meaning it is a risk for ongoing problems. Interestingly, from a study in 2011, every 10-point PTS score elevation increased hospital admission by 42% in the next 3-year period. So that means almost half the people, that have 10-point higher score, and these scores can get up to 70 or 80. And those with PTSD are at risk for recurrent event or death. And that doubles in a 2-year period after an acute cardiac syndrome. And risks for death for ICD patients with PTSD are 3 times higher within 5 years. So this is a critical element of recovery. It must be treated well. We know that prevalence rates for PTSD in the general population across the lifetime are around 8%. For heart attacks, 12% of patients who've had heart attacks also show up with PTSD symptoms. But sudden cardiac arrest and sudden coronary artery dissection patients, and these are based on registry data, almost 1 in 3. Hugely important that we do a better job in treating these patients. So my conclusion before I'll throw it open to Ruth to comment, and then to the audience to ask questions and comment. The first thing I want to say is, as a practicing psychologist and someone who's worked for 35 years doing psychotherapy, I know talk therapy is what is offered in most places. I myself have done talk therapy for most of my career. I have found that it does not change what the brainstem is holding. DBR, on the other hand, is targeting what that brainstem area holds, and it does effectively release and let go of those experiences, reducing that load on mental symptoms. Ruth herself has done an RCT demonstrating very good outcomes for those who have PTSD. It's promising. However, so far, there has not been a RCT with cardiac patients. In my experience, it's not just dissections that DBR can be very helpful with. I have treated people with sudden coronary arrest. I've had people that have had Takotsubo, heart attacks, and so on. It is very effective for a full range of cardiac problems, but we need those studies. There is a message of hope in all of you. I do hope you heard Genevieve's message. She is, I think, such a inspiring person. I just have loved working with her, and I think hopefully she allows all of you to get the same kind of experience and get the same determination to do better. So with that, I'll pass the microphone to Ruth if there's any comments or issues you want to raise.
Thank you, Jan, and it's such an honor to be here and to hear both of you. And Genevieve, thank you so much for your humbling story and really portraying hope. I think it's so important for all survivors of whatever medical condition, but of course, especially of cardiac conditions and dissecting aortic aneurysms, as we heard tonight. You're such an example of resilience. Right? I think it can really bring hope to all of us. What you suffered through, how you survived, and how you really transformed in the aftermath of this horrific event, I think is incredible. And I think, yeah, it's the path of hope we all have to follow. So thank you so much. And I think you also demonstrate so clearly what Jan talked about is that the PTSD symptoms after you had the aortic dissection is what really crippled you and prevented you from recovering, right? Just like those statistics we saw. And we've been working, our group in London, Ontario has been working a lot with deep brain reorienting, and I got very excited about deep brain reorienting because I work with a lot of PTSD patients who've had multiple failed treatments. And when I first learned deep brain reorienting, I saw a number of people with multiple previous failed treatments that started to recover. And so I said to my group, we've got to study this treatment. And we also heard about what happens in the brain, right? How that survival brain that has no words, starts to get those bodily signals and then transforms them into signals that we slowly become aware of. But I think what you also show is how the survival brain becomes disconnected from the thinking brain. And we're learning more and more about how the brain is a predictive organ, right? And so when we're in an environment of safety, we hope for the best and we prepare for the worst. And we can update information. But what happens in the aftermath of trauma and PTSD, and this is, I think, what you really showed us, is that you don't hope for the best. You constantly expect the worst, right? And that's how the survival brain learns to increase the chance of survival, right? That we expect the worst and we expect, just the very worst to happen. And so we lose that connection between the survival brain and the higher levels of the brain and that capacity to update information. So we keep being stuck at the lower level of the brain, at the level of the survival brain. We keep being stuck in the threat. And this is what we see when we image brains before people have DBR or deep brain reorienting. And then a stunning change happens after 8 sessions of DBR. And that is that the survival brain becomes reconnected with the higher thinking brain, as Jan talked about. And this is the part of the brain that can update information. So now we can update to the fact that we're in the present and that it's safe. And I think that's the journey you described, Genevieve, right? You were stuck in threat. You were stuck in the aortic dissection. But after DBR, you were able to come to the present and update to the present. And you were able to achieve synchrony among the survival, the emotional learning, and the thinking brain. And again, the story of hope continues, seeing those brain changes and seeing the clinical effects, right? I mean, what you describe, right? Your story of recovery, and that actually then mirror what we see in the brain. And, really enhance that capacity to be in the present again, to update again, and to live in your body again, I think is a message of hope. And so thank you very much to all of you. I'm very excited about the work you're doing, and I hope you will do a randomized control trial of deep brain reorienting in cardiac conditions. I think that would be so exciting. So thank you. It's been a real honor and privilege to be here with you.
Thank you, Ruth, so much.
Thank you, Dr.
Appreciate it.
Lanius.
Okay, Carolina, our moderator, back to you.
Thank you so much for each of you. So much hope, so much healing, and so much science as well. So we have questions, and I encourage everyone to post your questions right now. Before I go into the questions, if anyone would like to, wait a second, unmute, you are able to do that. Just raise your hand, and then we can start more discussions. And so we have questions. I will start from there.
Okay.
We have someone, actually we have two medical questions about some conditions, health conditions. So the first question is, what are the causes of aortic dissection? And so sometimes we don't know. Sometimes there is no obvious reason. Sometimes there is a genetic mutation. It's some people with Mar4 syndrome, for example, they are at a higher risk. And sometimes there are risk factors also contributing to that. So high blood pressure, smoking, and other things. But sometimes there is no obvious reason for that, okay? The other question is, why was SCAD, so spontaneous coronary artery dissection, so hard to diagnose in Genevieve case? And is that case for SCAD in general? So I just would like to clarify something very important here. Just talk is, we are talking about Genevieve. What happened to her was a aorta dissection. So it's the main artery that comes out of the heart to bring blood to all the body. That's where it starts in the thorax and goes down to the abdomen. So that's what we are talking about, that there was a dissection there. Something else is SCAD, and SCAD is also a disease more common in women, young women, and this is a dissection in the coronary artery. It's very specific in that case. The coronary artery is the artery which brings blood to the heart specifically. So it comes out of the aorta, and then these small vessels go to the heart to irrigate, to bring blood to the heart. So we are talking about different conditions, but as we heard today, to be very honest, sometimes it doesn't matter the condition, the trauma can be huge. And that's what we are all talking here, right? So, and why it's difficult to diagnose the SCAD. Genevieve pointed to something common that I will highlight here tonight. Women, when we go to the ER, many times we are dismissed, we are not hurt. So sometimes because the symptoms are not the typical symptoms, we don't like this word anymore. What is typical, it's what is atypical. But women present with different symptoms when they have a heart attack or a heart condition or an aortic condition, and they go to the ER, and it makes the diagnosis more difficult. So a message of hope, to make it short. That's why we're here tonight, to share that women are different, and there are others, as I pointed at the beginning of the conversation, the Canadian Women's Heart Health Alliance. So people doing research and advocating to raise awareness of this difference between women and men. So if you want, just take a look. There is a lot of information there. Okay. So let's go to, there is another question. Good. So now, does GBR work for PTSD in veterans? So I will leave that to Jan and Ruth.
Yes, I don't know that there's been an RCT study of any group other than the one that Ruth herself has conducted. So every population has its own unique demands and its own characteristics. I do think there ought to be RCTs of many of these particularly vulnerable groups, first responders, and I think cardiac patients are the two that really stand out to me. But I do think that from my point of view, there's no reason that it would not work. But maybe Ruth has had some experience of that in her clinic.
Yeah, I've treated some veterans with DBR with success, and I'm happy to also report that we're currently collaborating with the Canadian military to do a randomized controlled trial of DBR in veterans.
Lovely.
Amazing. And so a lot to come. Before I open the microphone, we have someone, also actually two people, just to Lisa's question. So the question is, how to Jan and Dr. Lanius, a second. So how many weeks or years or sessions do you typically do the GBR? And or it depends on every single person, the number of sessions?
That is a very good question. Yes. So the number of sessions clearly relates to the nature of the traumatic experiences, when they occurred in a person's life. So in clinical work, we tend to discriminate between what I would call a single traumatic event, like somebody who has a car accident at age 30, and someone who has had a very difficult childhood. And so we call the latter complex PTSD. And it's complex because the person, every child is dependent on the adult or adults that are looking after him or her. And if there is abuse or neglect in that caring relationship, it begins to create major difficulties in attachment, meaning that your capacity to trust another human being will be definitely compromised, because your experience in life has been that when I turn to mom and then she screams at me because maybe she's been drinking, I don't know what to expect. And so I'm always kind of, waiting for the other shoe to drop. So because trauma is not just a condition, it is a whole spectrum of different kinds of and extents of trauma, that the answer to the question lies in what kind of trauma are we dealing with. So that's the best answer I can give you. But for someone with pretty clear individual traumatic event, the number of treatments would not be more than about 8, at least in my experience in working with people who've come to me with events, even if they've had post-concussive syndrome and other kind of complications. The DBR works really well and very quickly. But of course, people with very complex childhood, adverse childhood experiences, of course, treatment can last many years.
Thank you for sharing that information. Another follow-up question is, what are the resources available for training of healthcare providers and in the OHIP system for patients?
Ruth may have a better pipeline in terms of what Frank is doing, but I know there's training all the time for mental health providers around the world. A lot of it is done online.
Unfortunately, not a lot is OHIP accessible yet, but hopefully as it gets expanded into mainstream hospitals, that's when I think we can hope for increased OHIP coverage. And I think clinics like yours, Dr. Carvalho, can really model, the best treatment for these conditions. And then hopefully other centers will pick that up as well.
Definitely. Thank you. Yes, it will be a pleasure really to advance the
they'll
knowledge.
want to come and bump us out of the number 2 position, right?
Yeah. So I think we could be here for more time for sure. I'm just aware that we are just 1 minute out of time. And I would like to maybe ask Dr. Lanius, Dr. Reitav, our dear Genevieve, if you have your final comments, and then we will close. Just from my side, this talk was recorded, and I know some people had some issues to log in, and so we will share the recording, no problems. But thank you so very much for the 3 of you for coming and sharing, inspiring me, and I'm sure others. Any last comments from you?
Thank you so much for moderating. Thanks everyone for showing up. Get the word out. These are things that I think are going to change healthcare. And thanks, Genevieve, for your lovely description of how one persists, even when, because I hate to think of what would have happened had you not gotten the car and driven to Mackenzie Hospital, right?
Right.
Because that would have been a tragedy. So good on you. Keep that spirit going.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody at UHN and Toronto Rehab, Cardiac College. I just wanted to let everybody know, I recently told Dr. Reitav that I need to keep him in my back pocket for when I need treatments. And I also told him that he and his wife need to move in with me so I can be accessible to those treatments every day. And this is how much I believe in DBR. And I am I feel so honored to meet Dr. Lanius and Dr. Reitav, Dr. Carvalho, and the rest of the team at UHN. You are all my extended angel network.
Thank you, Genevieve. Thank you so much. So everybody, thank you for joining. Thank you so very much. Spread the word, GBR, trauma, PTSD, after a cardiac event. And let's together, I really hope we can do that together, change what we have right now in our world. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.